So welcome to our fifth episode of Cultivating Education. Tonight we'll be talking about harvesting, tasting and cooking. And thank you all for joining us again tonight. My name's Natalia Clark-Mill and I work for an organization called Action for a Fairer World. And today I am joined by Bob Donald, One Seed Forward, and Professor Donald Gray from University of Aberdeen. I will just like to welcome you all and let you know that we're going to be spending about 60 minutes together, maybe less. We will be happy to take any questions that you might have. And also, we are recording this session so that the others who were not able to join us tonight were able to benefit from this. So yes, so let me just quickly introduce my two guest speakers tonight. So we have Professor Gray, who is a professor at the School of Education at Aberdeen University. He's currently involved in developing the idea of garden schools with the organisation called One Seed Forward. So Bob Donald's the chair and founder of One Seed Forward, and it is a voluntary organisation based in the northeast of Scotland, and they encourage people of all ages to grow their own food and for schools to increase their outdoor learning activities. So you have spent some time with us over the last 5 months looking at various stages of how to build a garden, your school garden. So it is exciting to be in May and see what we have in store for May. So thank you very much, and I'll pass over to my speakers.
Thank you, Natalia. Right, I'll just share my content there, so just bear with me a second, folks. Okay, so hopefully you can see our Cultivating Education PowerPoint sitting in there. So, welcome everybody. So it's nice to be with you all again. We're going to be talking this evening about harvesting, cooking and tasting. This is a combination of our two final modules within the Garden School programme. And so it's a little bit slightly longer as far as some information is concerned. If you haven't already accessed our Garden School programme, then you can do so by sort of clicking on the QR code that you will get a copy of this recording as well, or just visiting our OSF Garden Schools website. The picture is actually from my own allotment, albeit about 4 years ago. And so it was sort of quite colourful. So hopefully it's an indication of the sort of various colourful fruit and veg that you can actually sort of like grow in your own school areas. Just before I do get started, I just want to just very quickly talk about our programme. The Garden School programme has 8 main modules, and the use of the program and the materials are very, very flexible, and so it's all been designed in such a way that it can cope with applications towards whether you're in early years schooling, whether you're in late primary, or whether you're in secondary schooling as well. Each module that we have has its own discrete page, which will have a brief introduction. There's a short film on each one, which ties into our YouTube channel, and there's also links to downloadable teaching guides, as well as a list of resources and activities to support the modules. What we do ask is that if there's something of interest that you use in your classroom already, then please do share that with us, because we're always looking to increase the amount of resources and activities that teachers have availability to, and to update our activities as well, our module activities. It's very much an ongoing process. Okay, so let's get started on our programme. So today we're going to build on the results of all the efforts of planting and tending the crops that we've done so far in the programme. And we're going to look at the lessons that we can plan from this most productive of activities. We'll look at the uses that you can make of the produce that you've been growing over the past few months, and how the processes of harvesting and cooking can raise discussions with your class about health and well-being, different cultures, history and science. Hopefully the research done by people about the length of time plants need to mature for picking and the careful tending of these has resulted in crops that are ready to be harvested, ideally within the school term. Now, it's always a challenge looking at crops that we can do in the school term in Scotland, but there are sort of various things that if we were to start in March, we can actually sort of be able to do. Observation and measurement of vegetables can continue up to the point that they're gently pulled out of the ground. This could be numerical, for example, counting the quantity as well as measuring the weight of the vegetables. The potential different weights and shapes of the same vegetable types can lead to discussions amongst the class as to why some are larger than others. So, was there adequate space around the plant when it was harvested? Was there any sign of any diseases or pests that may have had an impact on growth? You could have the children design simple tables that can record the various harvests of the day and use these for comparisons when doing more harvesting during the school year. So on this slide, for example, you're going to see a form that was designed by Woodside Primary, one of our initial pilot schools. And this was really for each of the pupils to sort of have an ability to write down which crops they've gathered and which ones did they look at but they didn't feel were ready to harvest, as well as having suggestions about maybe other things they would like to grow in the future seasons. And again, maybe an idea for observation would be to leave some of the root vegetables in the ground for a couple more weeks and see if there's a difference in their shape and volume when they take them out. Now, bringing the crops back to the classroom allows for more observation and discussion to take place. Young gardeners should be encouraged to handle the vegetables and pay attention to their appearance. How does the skin look and feel? Is it robust? Is it fragile? What do the leaves look like? Is there evidence of any nibbling by pests? And of course, what does it smell like? The children could do some research on what typical size and quantity of the harvested plants are, as well as checking out for fun what the largest ever recorded were too. It's important when harvesting to choose the best conditions for doing it, as well as the best conditioned plants. Ideally, a dry day will make standing around and working in the soil much easier. You should look for vegetables that appear to be ready for picking, as some crops will deteriorate if left in the ground or on the vine. It's also at this prime time that the vegetables will be at their most nutritious and most importantly at their tastiest. If you've been following a suggested plan of succession planting, where seeds or seedlings are planted weeks apart to extend the growing season, so you don't have a glut of one particular vegetable at the same time, then care should be taken as to which crops are being harvested. So good labelling and recording is important here. I would always suggest that when you're doing some planting, if you pop a sort of lollipop stick in with the name of the plant, but on the back of it, put the date that you've planted it. That way you can see how long it's taken to grow. And you can also do comparisons about how successful it is. And maybe even if some plants in the same family are catching up, even though they've been planted maybe a week or two apart. When I'm thinking about harvesting, it's really it's a seasonal celebration, and there's lots of countries that hold special holidays based around the process of gathering crops and giving thanks for the produce that's been delivered. So two little photographs I've got here. One on the left-hand side just always reminds me of my time in the USA and the Thanksgiving celebrations that were there. Very, very keen on pumpkins at Thanksgiving, pumpkin pies. And the other one's a bit more local. This is in Huntly at the Huntly Hearst, which takes place in September. And again, there could be sort of various different local celebrations and harvests that you have within your own communities. So it's quite a good opportunity for pupils to do some research into the history of harvesting vegetables and exploring, for example, the links to seasonality, to cultures, and also to religion. The idea of seasonality is one that can launch a range of different lessons. Some plants that have short growing seasons, such as radish and spinach, can provide multiple cropping over a few months, whilst others like asparagus and globe artichokes may need more than one season before being ready for picking. Potatoes can come into 3 different categories: first earlies, second earlies, and main crop. And again, they offer an opportunity for pupils to investigate the multiple varieties and characteristics within each of these categories. And for all those of you who know me, potatoes are my main thing. So they've always got a story to tell. Each variety has got a different story of heritage. So it's always very interesting. But the concept of in-season, and especially the eating of local in-season produce, helps to make the link to understanding seasonality and the taste of food, as well as the nutritional value. Activities related to taste can enhance these ideas. So what we see here on screen is a project called Slow Food's Taste Adventure, and this can easily be replicated in the classroom. Pupils can explore the different properties of vegetables and spices through using each of their 5 senses. So they can taste them, touch them, smell them, hear them, and see them. For example, you can pop a parsnip in a bag and have the children put their hand in and guess what it is. The rough texture and shape may lead to alternate guesses such as carrots. And this may be a platform for you to discuss root vegetables, the similarities between them and their growing characteristics, but also why some of the same veg are shaped differently than others and whether they can still be eaten. Do you think the taste will be the same? You can see wonky veg in many of the supermarkets for sale now, and maybe discuss with the children, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? It's actually, obviously, it's a good thing because what we're seeing is the utilization of produce. But it's important that this idea of not everything being perfect as far as the look of it is, as far as you're concerned with your growing processes. You could set a homework task there for the pupils to ask if their parents would buy wonky veg, and if not, why not? This was a really good day that we had, Rachel and I. It was a few years ago now, but the children were very, very engaged with the whole tasting processes. So I think it's something, well, definitely worthwhile considering doing in your school. Examining different crops allows you to introduce science into the classroom. Some plants have big leaves to capture more sunlight, while others have small leaves to avoid excess transpiration. Why do some plants need a lot of water? What is the impact of local climate on the length of time that it takes for them to grow? Is there enough heat or rain for them to mature, or is there too much? Considering seasonality of vegetables allows you as a teacher to introduce themes such as sustainability to your lesson plans. Fruit and veg that are out of season locally but available in the shops can also raise awareness and address issues like food miles and biodiversity. Some schools may have the opportunity to allow children to cook in either the school kitchen or in special facilities. Home economics classes can offer a variety of learning experiences, with practical activities developing a range of skills, as well as allowing pupils to research healthy diets and cooking methods. This can also allow children to develop teamwork skills, and the delivery of a successful meal can increase their confidence and self-esteem. Taking produce directly from the school garden and using it to produce a meal, or sampling it raw, can open up discussions about the taste and feel of vegetables in their cooked and uncooked states. These considerations can help pupils understand the basics of digestion as the breaking down of complex foods, for example, via cooking and heat or by mechanical means. Such discussions can show the importance of good dental health and hygiene, but also the importance for humans to have access to energy for cooking, a topic which could then lead to other discussions, such as sustainability of energy systems. So you can use this garden process as a stepping stone into lots of other different areas. Now, during our pilot program, our experiences showed that it's more likely that pupils be willing to sample food they've grown themselves rather than when it was placed in front of them on a plate. And this experience can engage pupils in wanting to learn more about the origins and uses of different foods. Fast-growing crops, and you see some strawberries here and some radish or some pea shoots and lettuce, if they're quickly rinsed under a tap and eaten, can be shared amongst the class, but also with other pupils who may not be directly involved in the garden at school currently. This may encourage an interest from more children to want to be involved in garden-related activities, with the possibility that your garden school expands beyond separate class lessons to the creation of a gardening club or even an eco group. And we've seen that in several of the schools that we've worked with. Now, as well as nurturing their planning skills, the harvest can give pupils the opportunity to increase the amount of involvement the school has with the local community. They will know what crops they're growing, so research could be undertaken to obtain different recipes for using them. They could maybe start at home by asking family members, or they could research going on a world tour, choosing different countries to see what recipes they can find. Would they be able to source all the ingredients easily and locally? Would they be in season where they live? Perhaps the school may want to have a fruit and veg day at the gates to sell to locals. This can develop art and English through the creation of marketing pamphlets or newsletters, as well as maths and interpersonal skills when the children come to sell the produce. This could also lead to the creation of a pupil and community group to look after the crops during the holidays. Depending on how good the season's been or which seeds have been sown, some crops may not be ready before the school breaks up and will need to be tended during the holidays. Some may reach their ripeness and should be harvested and used to avoid food waste. Having a dedicated group checking on the health and welfare of the plants is a benefit to all and could lead to some great intergenerational learning opportunities. The crops that you've chosen to grow will determine when harvesting can be done, and a group maintaining the garden can allow the harvest to go right through the summer and into late autumn. So I'm going to stop sharing now. That kind of is my stuff as far as the harvesting module is concerned. And Donald, hopefully you're available to take over.
Well, yeah, okay, great. Let's start again. So the food activism journey. Why food? Why food and why food activism? Well, food is essential to us as human beings. It forms the chemical basis of our bodies. It makes up the stuff of our bodies. But as you know, we have a culture around food. It forms a component of human survival, society, and cultural, and there's loads of aspects of food culture which we engage with. We identify different countries by the food that they eat and by the kind of cultural activities and processes that go on around about food. But I suppose fundamentally what we're interested in is the intimate relationships between humans and the earth. I mean, it is a product of our interaction with the earth and what the earth provides for us. So it reminds us that the earth provides, what we stand on provides the food that we depend on. And so that is why food is important. But why food activism, and what do we mean by food activism? Well, there's one aspect of food activism which is about countering some of the processes and the practices that have taken place on an industrial scale. We find that culture and heritage of our relationship with food, which has evolved over thousands of years, is being eroded by industrial and commercial enterprise and by what we might call industrial processes of food production and consumption. It's often kind of exemplified by the McDonaldization of things. So we also have this disparity between those who can afford to buy or consume the food, which is often produced in third world or developing world situation. I think we now call it the global south, and the global north consumes these things. We know that there are a vast amount of emerging infectious diseases coming from both wild and domestic animals. Over 30 new human pathogens have been detected in the last 3 decades, 75% of which have originated in animals. So all these things are contributing to a culture and environment around food which is not exactly healthy. We know that in the US, 17 million US households were food insecure in 2022. And that seems to be growing. And we'll have seen the news reports of people having to use food banks in current economic circumstances. And there are now higher rates of food insecurity. And part of that is to do with our dissociation, our disconnection with food production and where it comes from. So food activism, and when we say food activism, it's important. We're not necessarily talking about demonstrations in the streets. We're not necessarily talking about having a revolution of waving placards and so on. I mean, it's about being active in the way we engage with food and do not allow us to be dominated by particular ways of thinking about food. So it's really about food activism. It's about interrupting the pattern of unsustainable consumption of food. And it gives communities a voice of what matters to them. We often come across things like terms like food security and food sovereignty. So food sovereignty, then, when food is of, by, and for the people. Food security really just means that the food is available, but food sovereignty is when the people actually have the control over that process. And this will allow us to reconnect people's habits and behaviours with concerns for the earth and with the origins of food. I can't remember the details now, but currently we have a big issue with climate change and with biodiversity loss, and current industrial agricultural practices have a significant footprint in that. I can't remember the exact details, but I think it's about 25% contributing to climate change. So the story of the food activism story started with the Garden Schools project with Bob and myself talking about this a number of years ago. Some of that will have come through in the modules that have been presented. But over time, then, we have the other developments taking place. So several years ago, well, not several years ago, it was 2019, we started, Laura and a colleague from Strathclyde, Claire Cassidy, got some funding to do a food activism project. And I'm just, sorry, thing hiding my screen. So there was this disconnect, which I'll come back to this little vignette that we've got here in a minute to say what these are about. There's another one on the next slide. We got funding for what was called the Scottish University's Insight Institute project to look at food activism in the schoolyard, and I'll say a little bit about that in a minute. But these vignettes you see on the screen were part of that process and were produced by an artist who attended the various meetings that we had. Let's go on screen. Sorry. So the project questions were, I mean, basically, how do our educational systems provide children with the knowledge and skills that for many centuries have guaranteed human survival with a changing world? So what role does education have in this? And what are the opportunities afforded by a food activism lens in education? How does it inform what we are already doing, and what could we do differently? And that's part of the questionings we want to ask ourselves. And then the project started with the Garden Schools initiative, was taken forward with the Scottish University's Insight Institute project, which took together a much wider range of people, which I'll come to in a minute, and was really engaged with looking at the idea of direct experience in producing food in a school garden. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from the garden. But we need to keep looking at that, and we need to have an ongoing inquiry about the role of gardens in developing ideas around sustainability, about where our food comes from, as well as linking in with the curriculum that we already have. There's a little video here, but I'm not going to play the video. It will come with the link to it, but it's really about developing what's called a STEAM garden: science, technology, engineering, arts and maths, rather than STEM. And you'll see that on the next slide. I'm just going to go straight into the next slide. So the STEAM garden is this process, but we've taken the letters from the STEAM, science. So we think that educationally, while you can get STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths from gardens, we also think that there's a sensorial aspect to that, that we change the idea of time from being a very fixed kind of chronological sequence to an appropriate sequence. There are things about enactivism, embodied. The body is an important part of education in the garden. We can talk about aesthetic awareness, the arts coming into the idea of the garden, but we could also replace that with activism, and I'll say a little bit about that just now. And we need to deal with things that matter in the garden. So this leads us on to the details of the food activism in the Schoolyard project, which took together a number of participants from a broad range, from policy, from local authorities, from schools, from the universities, and it was run over 4 workshop sessions, and it was supposed to be run over a couple of years. But as I mentioned, the funding happened in 2019, which was at the tail end of 2019, and the first workshop was successfully done before COVID hit. And in that workshop, there was a lot of talk about what a framework for food activism would look like, and what a learning for sustainability framework would look like. I'm not going to go into the details of all the things that we had, but we had the artist who would jot down notes and produce vignettes, which were then later analysed. There was lots of discussion around people's experiences and what they'd done in the garden, in school gardens, and growing food and so on. And we also had a workshop session here in Aberdeen, where we got children in to talk around their experiences, children who had been taking part in the pilot school, the pilot garden schools project, and they actually cooked some food. I think it was Bob will remember, I think it was scones of some description, but they talked about their experiences. We got a lot of information back from all the participants. The third workshop had to take place online, and again, it was quite a tricky thing to do, but over these workshop sessions, we gathered a lot of information about what people's views on food activism were, and what that meant, as well as a learning for sustainability initiative. Now, the print is too small to read here. I think we've got, but essentially, the food activism framework took place around 5 areas, which was food quality, food production, food sustainability, food access, and food sovereignty. And the key areas of you'll see the red, yellow, and blue areas relate to, and I can't read that now, it's social justice, learning, and inquiry. So each of these formed the basis of activities, and I'm going to share with you these actual documents. I'll put them in the chat in a minute. And that, we hope, forms a a framework that teachers can work with towards taking food into the classroom, preferably in relation to a growing process in a school garden. See if we can get onto the next slide. And the next slide looks at, we developed a learning for sustainability framework. And again, this looked at various aspects of learning for sustainability around social justice, inquiry and learning again. And these are meant as kind of guidelines about the ways in which we can approach sustainability with food in mind as well, but the learning for sustainability framework went beyond the food as well. So we have these two frameworks, and I'm going to share that with you, but I'll just finish off with two things that were mentioned. We have a lot of garden schools activities. We've got One Seed Forward clearly working and with a large number of schools. Bob will remind us how many we've actually engaged with. This one that you're looking at here is actually from Grace Mount, which is where Laura and Jonathan Hancock were working. And again, there's a lot of stuff that they're doing. They're involved in another research project which involves Grace Mount, but they've had support from One Seed Forward as well, with seeds and so on. And the final thing I'm going to mention is just which we may come back to in a later webinar. But because of the reach of One Seed Forward, you could say, we've been contacted by a guy from Togo, and this perhaps is where it exemplifies. I should say Grace Mount School is in one of the, it's I think came the lowest school in Edinburgh in relation to the disadvantaged nature of the intake. And Togo as well is another interesting one. It's on the fourth. It's in the least developed, one of the least developed countries in the international development framework that is produced by the United Nations. And Slow Food have an initiative to develop gardens in Africa. This guy, Kuku, is one of the people developing that in Togo. And so we started working with them. They often children don't have access to food in school. They have to often go home about 11:30 with the expectation that they come back at 2:30 and don't come back. And that's partly because they often have to walk several kilometers to get to school. So a number of schools have started producing their school gardens in order to grow food, to equip canteens, to enable them to provide lunches for these children. But that's another story, another project. So essentially that's food activism, and I'm going to stop that there. And this is where I hope that you're still with me, because I couldn't see anything. Let me see if I can stop sharing the screen to get back into the. Here we are. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you. Thank you very much.
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and share the those two documents in the. How do I put this into the?
Do you mean you want to share links in the chat?
No, I'm going to share the actual documents, the two frameworks, but I'm just looking to see if I can get them.
We can always pass those on to people, Donald, when Natalia's doing her follow-up, and
okay.
When we've got them on our individual YouTube channels, we could probably put links in.
That's right.
Well. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a link in the slides. I can put. In fact, I'll get you the link to the SUII website, which has got the the framework on it.
Yes, so I think if there is anything that you'd like to share just now that you don't have to hand, if you just send it to me, email it to me,
Yeah,
I'll make sure that all the participants have got it and that it's available, like Bob says, in the under the recording in the YouTube channel as well. We'll have all those links. So that should be
I've
great.
got the link there. It's now in the chat.
Wonderful. That's great. So I just wanted to see if there was any questions that anybody wanted to ask, and also just to thank you both once again for a wonderful series. We're certainly going to miss Professor Gray, who is retiring. So congratulations, first of all, I think, and also well done. You made it.
I think I'll still be around, you know, popping my head in places.
We certainly wouldn't want to lose touch with you, and would love to work with you going forward if you are that way minded.
Well, I'm still going to be working with this Togo project anyway,
Great.
so
yeah,
we'll manage to keep up to date with that.
Amazing, because you've done so much incredible work. So it would be we're loath
I've
to,
also got a
lose
student doing a PhD on garden-based learning in China, because they've got a policy there. So we're developing the international scenario.
So this is just a partial retirement then, and then there's still a whole lot of work going on.
Yeah.
Pleased to hear. Wonderful. And Bob, thank you also very much for working together with Mr. Gray, Professor Gray, and also that we were able to, I'll call you Donald, and also that we get to be hosting you and show all the work that you've been doing in schools and in particularly with gardening. So what we'll do is, so there isn't going to be a session in June, which is what we've agreed on, and we will be in touch with everyone about what we're going to be doing next. That's, I think, how we're going to sign off today. If there's any questions from anyone or anybody wants to contact us, even if you're listening or watching this in on replay or on any of our YouTube channels or any of our links in our websites, then please get in touch. I'm going to put my
You've just muted yourself.
Just muted yourself. I thought it was my computer playing up again, but
no, I was away to share something and then I muted myself in the process. I just wanted to share the contact details because I put my contact details in the chat, which are not going to show in the recording. So here's a picture of them, just in case anybody wanted to get in touch about any of this. I can send you links or contacts to people. So I think that's all from us this time.
Sorry, just before we go, Natalia, there was two things I was wanting to talk about, if that's okay, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Quickly, one, just picking up on Donald's questions and comments. We've got 26 schools who have are taking part, or who've been awarded garden school status at various stages at the moment throughout the UK. It has to be said, not just in Scotland. So we've got various schools, and the latest one was just Hatton Fintry in Aberdeenshire that just got stage 3. So congratulations to them if they are watching on the links or anything like that. And I just wanted to, before we go, to share one thing, which, if you don't mind, which is our shoebox garden competition, because it's one of these things that, as Donald will probably tell you, I always come up with ideas, keep on getting told by my committee to stop coming up with ideas, but this has proven really, really popular. And so the whole idea about it is for children to get creative and to look at growing things. And so what we want them to do is design a garden in a shoebox. It's an individual competition, but also a school competition. So the school competition, if you have 5 entries from your school, then you can take part in it. Entry is also put into the individual competition. There are prizes for it. We're always blown away by the quality and the ingenuity of the pupils. It's fantastic. We've got a lot more details on our Facebook pages, and also you can contact us on our oneseedforward@gmail.com account. But you'll see on the details there that you've still got until Friday, June the 28th. So unless you're really watching this in a few weeks' time, there's still at least 5 weeks from the date of recording for you to take part in it. And please try and encourage your pupils to take part in it. This was some of the gardens that we've received a couple of years ago. Yeah, every year there's always I get more and more enthused by what they're actually doing. So just a quick reminder that our garden school competition is live, and so if you want to take part, our shoebox garden competition, sorry. So if you want to take part, please do so. Okay, we'll stop sharing that. So thank you.
That's great. So we have a comment from David Innes in the chat. Busy sounding retirement, Donald. Great work on this particular topic, and more widely, many thanks and best wishes. So that's from our chair of Aberdeen for a Fairer World, Action for a Fairer World.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We're getting thanks from participants in the chat. I'm just going to reading some of them as they're coming in. Thank you very much for attending and for keeping up with in the last 5 months. We're also looking forward to hearing how the school gardens are going. Let us know, send us pictures, participate in competitions, and keep up the good work. So there's another message there. Thank you. And I wondered if Bob would be happy to visit school to give some advice. So Bob, there's a... What school would that be, Michelle? Would you like to let us know what school it is?
Yeah, it would be Peterhead Academy.
Okay, thank you.
We're just in the process of doing our raised bed area, and we've just put the polytunneling up. We haven't planted anything as yet, but we've just got the area all prepped and all the raised beds in. We've still to fill the raised beds, and obviously just going forward, it would be really handy if maybe Bob would like to pop along and see what we're doing and maybe kind of advise us to go in the right direction. We are following obviously One Seed Forward and your potato planting and all that, Bob. So I've been telling the pupils that all about it, and obviously trying to get them to get more enthused. So it would be really good if we could maybe get you along at some point, maybe not this term, but maybe even get into the next term, and give us time to plan it.
Yeah, so well, yeah, certainly happy to come for a visit. Make sure I'm there before you build any beds, though, okay? Because
something.
I could probably give you some advice about
we've already got. Yeah, we've already got the beds kind of there, but some of them we haven't put any of the compost or anything in as yet. Right. But if you want to come soon, you can come up and have a wee look, because we're actually just in the process of getting the green waste, getting the cardboard in before we get the soil and stuff to go in. So if you're able to come up and have a look and maybe to guide us before the end of this term, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. Yeah, well, can certainly do that. We've got one of our garden training courses happening at the Peterhead Community Garden at the moment.
Yeah, seen that. And yeah.
So I could probably try and see if I could do a double visit. And
so we do the John Muir Award and that in the academy. So some of the pupils have been taking part in the John Muir Award, and then today we had some of the S1s doing community days, and they were in painting the raised beds just to kind of get them all kind of preserved before we kind of then put in. So yeah, if you're in the area even next week, give us a wee shout, and I would be happy to welcome you there, to be honest, and get the advice.
Yep, sure, absolutely. Well, just drop me an email, please, Michelle. Yep. So I've got your contact, and then we can have a look and see what we can do there.
That would be perfect, Bob. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, that's wonderful. There are some more messages which I'm sure you can read, but I'm just going to read them out just so that they get in the recordings as well. So we've got Doug Haywood saying, been watching some of the recorded sessions. Great work. Thank you, from Gilcomston School. And Lindsay Burnett saying we've got about 60-foot polytunnel and 20 veg beds the children are working on at Northmuir Primary in Kirriemuir. Lots of things growing and planted. I can send photos if anyone wishes, or go on to Sustainable Kirriemuir page. Oh, we would love to, Lindsay, love to get some photos. And also we will visit your page as well. Thanks so much for sharing that. And then we have some good wishes as well from David, and also, yeah, wonderful. Lots going on, lots of good stuff going on in the chat just now. So any other final words and comments? Or
I was just going to say to, yeah, sorry, Don. I was just going to say to Lindsay, yeah, it sounds like you might actually already be started on your Garden School Awards program. If you send us an email with some photographs and everything, we can have a little chat with you about progressing all that, because there's gardening vouchers to be had as well. So that's great. The amount of work you're doing there, it sounds great. Sorry, Don.
Lindsay's just asking which email to use. So would you be able to type it in the chat, just which email to use, Bob, to get in touch with you?
I'll do that right now.
Go ahead, Donald.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, this has been about food and food activism, and I mentioned Grace Mount School, which is interesting because the garden elective that they've got is a group of mainly girls. There's one boy in it, but they've started growing stuff, and it's run by the home economics teacher. So clearly she's got an interest in the food aspect of it. But last week we were I was in helping Laura with some stuff, and we made ink from you can make inks from the leaf materials or the flowers and things, so we had a go at that. And you can also do printing. We did some prints. They wanted to prepare a table. Not this week, next week they've got a plant and bake sale. Maybe it's tomorrow actually, plant and bake sale. So they want to get a tablecloth. So we did some leaf prints on the tablecloth. So everything was, so this is where the arts came in. So it was quite a good session. So you don't have to be restricted to the food. I mean, that's what we start with, but you can do a lot of other things out of the garden as well to do with arts and other areas.
That's great. I think I have a hand up. That's David Innes.
Yeah, it was just really to throw into those folk who haven't been in previous sessions, and we are able to help the seed funding, things like that. There's organisations who work with them on the board in ESCAN, and I know there is some money in through seed funding on other things that so it's little bits of equipment and that that we can certainly signpost you towards. And I know Bob, you've got links as well that sometimes can, depending what locality you're in as well, you know, some parts of local authorities have little bits of money you can access, or indeed expertise that you can access locally. Is that a really good thing? The other day, Tilly Drone Earth and Worms, and again the folk in there are very helpful, and would be keen to help any sort of schools in that area. But there'll be equivalents in many communities around about the northeast now. Keen to help allotment groups and all of that. So again, we do have access to those sort of contacts if you don't have them locally. So Natalia's put her contact details in there, and Bob's got his in there. So if you come through us, we can help out. So don't be stuck, and don't do all this sort of feeling you've got to do all the hunting for that yourselves. You're busy teachers, and we can do some of that lifting for you because you're doing the work in your schools. So just that. Actually, I had one other curious question. I wanted to know from our two experts whether they were fair weather gardeners or wet weather gardeners. Which do they prefer? Who wants to go first now? And Donald or Bob?
Well, you know, we've got access to a greenhouse and polytunnel up at Grove Nursery at Hazelhead, and when I have my volunteers in, it's quite often hitting 37 to 40 C. So I think they'll be more than happy coming along tomorrow when it's a wee bit cooler, because we'll have to spend more time outside eating cake and drinking coffee when it's that warm. So I'll get a bit more work out of them tomorrow. I don't mind. I think that was one of the things when we did the pilot. Donald will recall, we used to take the children out regardless of what the weather was like. It didn't matter whether it was raining or whether it was sunshine. We just got them outside, and so.
In fact, I think that video is, you'll see at the beginning, they're kind of all wrapped up, and it had been raining. I don't know if it was raining at the time we were out, but we certainly have had them out. Although it must be said, it's much more pleasant to be out in the sunshine. But
true, that's true.
Although I should say that I was informed by, I was on a call yesterday with Cuckoo from Togo, and he was telling me that it's now, and this is what they're waiting for the gardens, it's the rainy season now. So they're quite happy to get the rain in the rainy season. And means they've got the rain, because the water's often a problem.
Yeah, so it's just puts things in perspective where we have so much water in our part of the world, and then elsewhere, water is a real problem. So, okay, so I think, is that us now?
I think so.
Definitely. Okay, that's great. Thank you
I
all
will
very
stop
much.
the recording now.
And